Well, welcome, and I know we've got some other friends joining virtually as well. I think we've got a nice sort of intimate group here. I think many of us who know IC3 pretty well. The purpose of this session, and I'm sorry I didn't introduce myself, I'm Jim McLaughlin, co-chair of the IC3 Movement, one of the first volunteers with IC3. I spent about 3+ years volunteering in various committee roles, and here we are. So the 5th annual IC3 conference is here, and whether you're, and if you can share in the chat also, if you've not had a chance to tell us where you're coming from, city and country, that would be great. The purpose of this session is multi-fold, really. What we wanted to do, and typically at the IC3 conferences there, in the past there have been specific sessions on volunteering, another specific session in the regional forums, another session about the Institute. This year we decided, given there was how much content there was, we wanted to condense some of the IC3 specific sessions, and this was built. IC3 Mission, Impact, Action. And the purpose really is to share some important updates about what's been happening during the pandemic times. It's been 2 years since we've actually had an annual IC3 conference, and even though lots of updates are happening in other ways, that's really the main purpose. And then also to look forward to what's to come. What are the key initiatives that are happening now? What are the key initiatives that will happen in the next year and beyond? And then lastly, it's how to get involved. And I know many of you here, obviously, and then those virtually are already involved, but I want to highlight some of those key ways. We had our an IC3 Advocates pinning ceremony this morning. We just pinned a number of new advocates in Shah Jahan Hall. So I think, Pankaj, if we can put the slides there. I do have some slides and just some visuals that will help kind of walk us through. And I think oftentimes our friends and folks around the world who've gotten involved with IC3, there's a lot happening across the movement, and whether that's with the Institute, the conference, regional forums, IC3 Live. I think it's helpful to have almost a structural overview of how things are operating and all of this. But we'll start with the mission, because that's really why we're here. It's about the mission, and if we can go to the next slide. I think for most of us, our first point of contact with IC3 was at an event. For many of us, it was the IC3 conference, but over the last 2 years, it's been amazing because that hasn't been the case, right? It's either been directly with the IC3 Institute, maybe it's IC3 Live, just the virtual programming, and it's a different, it's a different kind of connect. I think we've missed, now that we're in the hybrid, we can do more between the virtual and the in-person, and I think for those of us that are here, we're pretty overwhelmed by, what we're experiencing, and just getting back to some real connection. But the mission is really what drives us. Even though events are a big part of, I think, the vehicle for the work and the mission, it's about counseling in every school. And the fact of the matter is that there are most schools around the world, it's not that there's insufficient counseling or bad counseling, it's just that there's no counseling. And what we've seen in the pandemic is that even though counseling in schools has become, I think probably more important than it ever has been in history, given all of the uncertainty for students, all of the uncertainty for administrators and staff, that now counseling is still not quite getting the attention that it needs. And in some cases, because schools and universities, it's been a challenging time. I think whether it's tuitions are down and all of these kind of pieces, counselors have lost jobs, schools have been closed, universities have had similar challenges. So while all of this is going on, it's even more important now that we are IC3, and that when I say we, I mean everyone here is part of that mission and that movement of bringing counseling to every school. So when we're at an event, whether it's a regional forum or an IC3 Live virtual event, the festival or the conference, the event is the backdrop for, or the vehicle for the mission of counseling in every school. Next slide, please. So there are three main goals that we have in the IC3 movement, and we talk about sensitize, glamorize, develop. SGD, and I think this is something, this is good for all of us to have and to understand and to know, and to sensitize really is the first key goal. That's what we're doing here at the conference. That's what we're doing at the regional forums, especially. Many, and I'm thinking of Patancode and the regional forum that we had there, and the last time I was here visiting with, I think we've had 180 counselors, teachers from the region, the tri-state region, and it's exposure to this mission. It's exposure to why career and college counseling matters, and that's the most important thing, is sensitizing, firstly, educators, education leaders, school leaders, university leaders, and it's really up to us, and we have lots of conversations with our IC3 leaders and those that, in some cases we have this, for everyone in the room, it's almost like we're preaching to the choir. You're here, we understand the importance. How do we sensitize others is really the purpose of that first goal, that S, the sensitize. The glamorize is what we're going to be doing in just a couple of hours, and that's celebrating and recognizing the great work that's happening in schools and universities around counseling. So the annual IC3 India Awards will happen. There are global awards. There are 54 awards now, actually. It's been expanded in a global sense. So at the IC3 Festival virtually in December, all of those other nominees and awardees will be acknowledged today. Given the venue, given where we are, we'll focus on the India Awards specifically. But really, we want people to want to come into this profession, and we want them to look at this in the same way they look at becoming a doctor, an engineer, a pilot. It's an amazing world, and of course we're setting out to train, and that's really where the D comes in, to develop the resources, develop the training to actually have counseling in schools. I think one of the biggest challenges for many school leaders that we hear who don't have a counseling program already is where to begin. How to train. Who do we bring in? That's why the IC3 Institute, and next slide, this is really where the develop part comes in. It's the research, but more importantly, the resources and the training to have the IC3 Institute be there. And of course, the IC3 Institute is an established public charity based in the US, and this is really where the true work of IC3 is happening, is in the Institute. So, we can go to the next slide. I'd like to just get into this in a little bit more detail, and it's a little, on this screen, guys, can we just do the slides for now? Yeah, I think if we're able to do that, because I don't think everyone can see here. And that's fine. In the meantime, what we'll say is the IC3 Institute, the flagship one-year program, of course, Sarah's in that program. I don't know if anyone else is here. I know you have teachers and counselors that have gone through that program. That's the focal point of the Institute. 350 hours of instruction. Those that were at and celebrating the graduates last night, they've gone through that program. And these are, we've got senior school principals who've been in the field of education for 25, 30 years, who are now going through and dedicating this time to career and college counseling, and that's really what we're talking about in that one-year program. So we would encourage, if you're at a school, to come forward, join the Institute. If you're a principal, a school leader, encourage and support your teachers. Every teacher is also at least 10% counselor, so we have a lot of teachers who come in, and oftentimes that's the bridge between not having dedicated counseling and having dedicated counseling, is having a teacher go through the program, and then they can transition with the support of leadership to build that counseling department. The IC3 Institute Accreditation was just launched this past year, and this is, I think, going to be one of the most important from a benchmark setting standpoint across the world in career and college counseling. The IC3 Institute is now accrediting career and college counseling departments within schools, not the entire school and their operation, and I know I'm not sure if there are IB schools here or there are CIS schools here or other accreditations. No organization or institution is really focusing right now on career and college counseling except the Institute in terms of the accreditation aspect. I think most of you saw that we had we celebrated at the inauguration, the very first accredited school. The Hyderabad Public School in Begumpe was just accredited in this past week, so big milestone. This is going to be a big part of this. So the IC3 Institute as a whole, the idea is that it's completely open access. The resources are freely accessible to full-time school employees and really empowering schools in that way. That's the point. The flagship one-year program, they're $0 for a full-time teacher, principal, counselor at a school to go through that program. We want to remove every possible barrier for someone coming into that program and getting the training that they want and need. And really, this is advocating for students. This is advocating for those young people. There will be, in addition to the flagship one-year program coming up, at some point this fall, there are short-term programs that are going to be running asynchronously in a virtual capacity in addition to that flagship one-year program. And this is going to be a game changer for counseling and really a first step for a lot to get that training that they need. The IC3 Africa Committee, which we'll talk about a little later, and there's now an IC3 Latin America and Caribbean Committee. There are going to be 28 or 30 regional committees around the world that will be volunteer-based and working. The one-year program is a huge commitment, right? So I think these asynchronous programs, and of course those, remember, they're going through this, they're still teaching. They're still having their everyday responsibilities as a school leader or as a teacher counselor. So this, I think, will open up a lot more access to this. The counseling laboratory, we won't get into that in great detail here, but that is a true philosophy that's been pioneered really by Ganesh first, but it's been implemented at the IC3 Institute. And it is really more than physical space. It's an ethos in counseling, that counseling should be a central function within schools, not a peripheral function within schools. Not somehow, it's getting in the way of academic instruction or something like that, but really at the core. And then I do want to acknowledge that at the Institute, and we really don't give this enough attention, this year the IC3 Institute Consortium of Global Universities was launched. And there'll be 15 founding members of the global consortium, and these universities have truly committed to the mission of counseling in every school. They've moved away completely from any kind of transactional engagement with schools. They want to empower schools. They're invested in schools. They're critical for not just relationship building, but also in curricular development. All of the faculty pieces that come through are in a volunteer capacity. But largely now this is being driven through the consortium, and we just want to acknowledge that. And we're close to getting to that 15. I think we're at 11, if I'm not mistaken, 11 or 12 now, consortium institutions. And then of course our host universities that host the residential weeks of the flagship program. We can celebrate those. And then of course we talked about the volunteer faculty. So that's a bit of a summary about the Institute. There really is a lot happening, and that's not even to mention, for example, the Rebuild initiative, which I think you've learned about through this conference, and that was just recently launched in COVID times, specifically to support those. The Institute's committed to supporting 500 women who've lost a family member who really were their primary earners. Many times they've been out of the workforce for many years, or perhaps never in the workforce. and really coming now back to the Institute to get specific training. And how can you get involved? Your school can hire one of these counselors when they finish the program. You may know someone who falls into this scenario and they need support, they want to come back, they're passionate about this and helping young people. And it's not just the training that's being provided, it's there's a financial stipend, there's technology that's given, there's all kinds of support for their livelihoods. And that's really critical. I think this is one of the most important things that the Institute is focused on now. The first 100 plus women, ideally 150, will begin in September in that specific cohort. And of course, this is a philanthropic effort. You can donate, and we have, some of our friends have already done that here, but that can continue to happen, and really this is what will allow us to, to do that. Next slide, please. Impact, and I think it's important now, we're now at the 5th annual IC3 conference, right? So IC3 has been around for some time. These numbers are continually evolving. The idea here is that with IC3 and the focus really being on schools, there was a very deliberate choice to say, we could serve students directly, or we could spend our time focusing on school leaders and training counselors so that if we impact one student, that's meaningful. But if we impact one counselor, that's 5,000 students, 10,000 students, however many students over a lifetime, or even 1 year. So that's really been the focal point. And again, these pieces are continuing to evolve, but we're continually looking now at impact, and there's lots of things in the works, collaborations, partnerships that will help us scale. I think the size of the cohorts are continuing to grow, the global nature of the cohorts are continuing to grow. Next slide, please. All right, so in addition to the Institute, right, there are 3 other really core pillars that help us drive the mission of counseling in every school. One, of course, is what we're doing now. This is the annual IC3 conference. This is the largest gathering. I don't think I need to talk much about this. We're doing it now. We're doing it in a hybrid. We hope to see everyone back in person at some point, hopefully next year. We'll be announcing the dates of the 6th annual IC3 conference at the closing today. It's also on your booklet. You've seen that. So this is huge. We're here, and I just want to congratulate and thank everyone for supporting and being here. I think the belief that we're seeing now and what's possible in the hybrid, I don't think we can be stopped now. There might be periods where we have to dial it back, and other periods where we can, open up a little bit more, but we're learning so much about now how we can engage more and in a different way than just, sitting behind the black box on Zoom, very passively engaging with each other. Now we can do much more. Next slide. And next slide. So I want to give a little bit of background about IC3 Live. And many of you have participated in an IC3 Live event. When we say IC3 Live, right, and I think this is just helpful context, right, as we talk about the festival or Thoughtful Thursdays or presidential panel, there are all these various virtual events that really fall, anything that comes in a purely virtual capacity in terms of an event would fall under the umbrella of IC3 Live, which was born on June 4th of 2020, very much as, this was a pandemic birth, you could say. We were already doing virtual programming, but clearly there was a need to really ramp that up. The IC3 Festival, and I think we can go to the next slide, which, yeah. So the IC3 Festival, I don't think those dates are correct. In any case, we will have, the IC3 Festival will be in the first week of December. Registration's actually launching today. Sonny, don't take a picture of that. I think those, not that I don't want you to take a picture of it, I just don't want to give you misinformation. I think, Garima, can we confirm, is it the 2nd and 3rd of December? Okay, so that's fine. The 2nd and 3rd of December is the IC3 Festival. And what we learned last year in December, who was there at did anyone participate in the first IC3 Festival back in December? Yeah, that was the first time we were really doing that fully virtual conference. Even now that we're starting to do some things in person, there's still a need very much for the purely virtual, and whether it's a preference or people just aren't able to travel for various reasons. Maybe their institution is not allowing it, or maybe there's a number of reasons. This will remain. So we'll keep the festival. This will be a chance for us to continue. And thematically, another important change in this past year is that thematically, we used to say, okay, the annual conference has a theme of onward, right, which is this theme. The regional forums may have a different theme. The IC3 Festival may have a different theme. What we've done now and started in 2021 is that there will be an annual theme for all IC3. We'll be announcing that at the closing, what the 2022 theme will be, so hopefully you'll be able to see that. We'll tell you later. I know you'll be on a flight. So that will be there. This year has been onward, so this will actually wrap up the discussion of onward and this theme, and then we'll move to 2022, which we can go to the next slide. And really what I think I'm most excited about the regional forums now, because we haven't been able to have regional forums for some time due to the pandemic. And regional forums will be back in a big way in 2021. We're aiming for 30 regional forums across 10, 12 countries. And we are fully equipped and planning for hybrid engagement at those events. Now, there may be some difference, based on who's hosting, what's possible in, Mauritius and UAE and Nepal, and we'll work with that. But I think the point here is we can't let the pandemic stop us from bringing the conversations to the local areas. And that's the most important part of the regional forums, is that while the annual conference is amazing, not everyone can get here. I think even in a virtual capacity, there are still some limitations that we have, and I think people are still having a hard time kind of extracting themselves from their daily lives. And when they're in the purely virtual, when you're sitting in the room, you can't be anywhere else. So it's very nice, actually, that we're not checking email, or we're not, as Ganesh say, cutting vegetables on the side, or doing whatever we're doing in a virtual capacity. So the regional forums, I think, in addition to the Institute, are as important to the mission of counseling in every school as any other aspect of the movement, because it's those conversations, where I'm thinking about where we have a chance to really make an impact and do the sensitizing part right at the outset. So I can see we probably have some regional forum schools for 2022 sitting here, or maybe connecting. I don't know, Sarah, maybe this is the first year we can have one in Denmark. Let's bring the regional forums all over the world. So more to come on the regional forums. Registration will launch on the regional forums on the 15th of October. That's the intention. There's a lot of planning to do, and of course, all of that, but this is huge. And next slide. All right, so I just have a couple more, and then we can open it up. I think we'd love to hear from some of our friends who are here, and then also in the virtual capacity. How to get involved, and I think many of you are already involved, but I think some are coming to the session because they wanted to learn a little bit more about how they can get involved. Right off the bat, and we talk about volunteers, and there are lots of different ways to volunteer. You can come in and teach at the Ic3 Institute. That's certainly a form of volunteering. There are a whole host of other ways to do that, but in a more formal sense, there are now sort of two pathways to becoming a formal volunteer. And the first, which is a sort of a recently brought program, and that's IC3 Advocates. You might be seeing some walking around now with this pin with the hummingbird. This signifies an IC3 advocate. And a little backstory about the IC3 Advocates and how this was born. Over the last year and certainly more, we've had lots of people outside of education learn about IC3 through a family member, or maybe they've met someone who was impacted by it, and they were inspired. They would reach out and say, how do we get involved? And they're a graduate student, or nothing to do with the education field. And we really didn't have, other than just talking with them and maybe empowering them to connect with some of schools in their area, there really wasn't an avenue for them. So in walks the IC3 Advocates Program, because now any person from any walk of life can become an IC3 advocate. And now I mean, after today, I'm sure we've exceeded, maybe we're pushing 500 now, but 400 advocates from 40 countries now, and they're coming from all walks of life. We have policemen, we have lawyers, doctors, graphic designers, journalists, parents, anyone who wants to come and just make their own impact on this mission. And really, advocates are taking, there's a, it's a commitment to the idea that every young person truly needs and deserves guidance and direction in their lives. And that's what an IC3 advocate is pledging and committing to. And then also that they're going to make one act of change, one small act of change every other week. And this has nothing to do with an IC3 committee. There's a whole host of different categories of acts of change that range from sustainable development to gender equality, and of course to mentorship and counseling. So we'd encourage all of you, and we pinned some IC3 advocates today. You can take the pledge actually in Shah Jahan Hall. We have pins there for those that are physically present. And those virtually, will make sure we can figure out a way to get those pins to you. IC3 leaders. This really signifies those volunteers who are serving in a formal committee capacity. IC3 leaders typically dedicate 2 hours per week. And we can go to the next slide, because I think that actually shows, let's go, yeah, next one. This shows the range of main committees right now that exist. This doesn't represent a lot of the regional committees which are being formed and have been formed in the past around regional forums. But there's a whole host of committees and ways that you can get involved. IC3 leaders, they really are, they've taken that extra step to serve in a committee capacity 2 hours a week, and they're working on, perhaps it's all of the committees are involved in putting off the annual IC3 conference, figuring out, the most important ways and areas. The theme Onward was developed by the Content and Research Committee. All of the proposals that are here and received, all of the sessions that have been presented have been reviewed by the Content and Research Committee, for example. Inclusion, Diversity, and Scholarship. Sunny has served on this committee. We've had others. I see Sapna Shavangi is here. We've got lots of, and I think on the call, we may have others there that I'm not seeing. So we would invite you to come forward, and you can reach out to our team just to inquire about that. It is a commitment, and we do want that commitment. And you can also reach to me personally. I'm happy to have a conversation with you. I've served in various committee roles, and was one of the first volunteers back in 2016. And we would really invite that. Next slide. I'm not sure what we. Yeah. Okay. So at this stage, I think it would be great just to. Not sure how much time we have left. I think about 10 or 15 minutes. Let's open it up a little bit. I think if there are questions, if there are just sentiments that you'd like to share, this would be a great time to do that. And I think can we also get anyone who's in the virtual room on the screen? And we'd invite those that are there to switch on your cameras. We'd love to see your faces. I'm not seeing the chat box, guys, so if there are specific questions there, maybe you can just point them out to me, Garima, and then we'll address those. But yeah, I saw that, Sarah, let's have one in Copenhagen. I think that would be great if we're talking a regional forum. How about anyone in the room that's here? Maybe we just want to kick it off, and you can share a little bit about, oh, I can see Vanita is here. Gerardo is here. Vanita, can I call on you? I just want to, if you can unmute, we have the chair of our presidential committee here. Vanita, I think, put off an amazing presidential forum on Tuesday. And just, I think, one for the record books, certainly in the hybrid. Vanita, how about just a quick word from you? And oh, Vanita, just 1 second. I'm sorry. We need to get the audio on.
Okay, waiting.
Yeah, good to go. Okay, go for it. Thanks, Vanita.
Okay, so thanks, Jim. And I think I hope many people here did attend the presidential forum. And from my experience, I think the biggest high for me was the ability to connect with colleagues from across the world. And we set up our own little professional learning community. And as an educator, I think there is nothing that is more significant or adds to your learning more than learning from your colleagues. And the journey of the Presidential Committee, I think, is testament to the fact that when like-minded people volunteer and put their passion and energy into something really meaningful, it has a huge impact on those who are the recipients or the beneficiaries of that. So I would really encourage colleagues who are sitting there to give, because if you're an educator, it's always about giving back. And this is an amazing platform to give back, because even the little that you do, the cascading impact of that is going to be huge. So I would encourage you to engage yourselves as volunteers, as leaders, as advocates to a cause that is obviously very close to all our hearts. Thanks, Jim. Back to you.
Thanks so much, Vanita, and congratulations again. I think how are you feeling now that the presidential forum is over?
Oh, a sense of relief.
Yeah, big breath, I think that's when the belief came for this week, when we saw that room and, we're talking some of the senior most principals in the country and diplomats. It was just amazing. Of the world, that's right. Yeah, of course, in the hybrid, no doubt. Yeah, Sapna is here. Come on up. There's a microphone here. I think most of you saw Sapna, who was leading the graduation ceremony last night as well, but Sapna's played a lot of different roles. Let's see, is it on? Yeah, we'll get it on.
Yeah, so I just wanted to, more a comment than a question or anything else. I think what IC3 and this whole the activists and whatever, what it's really done, it has given us a platform to collaborate and network with people who we otherwise would have never met or collaborated with, right? So in fact, like last evening we were having a discussion with somebody and he said, so before this IC3 happened, did the schools work together? And we never worked together. So this has literally become the platform which has allowed schools to really come together and work with each other. There were platforms like the IPSC or something which was only limited to the principals, and for for a counselor to really get to know what's happening in other schools, what's going on. It's created such a beautiful community, and it's kind of transcended. Like earlier, there was this feeling of competitiveness between schools and stuff. It's really done away with that, and we've really been able to develop that ethos that we're all in this together. I think that's been one of the biggest achievements of this whole thing. And I'm really enjoying serving on the committees and really being a part of the whole thing. Yeah, that's all.
Can I add to that?
Thank you, Sapna. Yes, please, Mr. De Cruz, go ahead. I was going to invite you next. You read my mind.
This taking on from where Sapna left us, this journey, I've been coming for the IC3 for the last 4 years. And I would like to share that it has enriched not just me, it has enriched my institution immensely. Every chief guest that I've had for my school for the last 4 years has been people who I've met from the IC3. Be it the elegant Lata Vaidyanathan, or Sita Murthy, or Dr. Amita Mishra, and the list can go on of people that I have invited to my institution and learned. And as Sapna very rightly said, education is not all about competition, it's about collaboration. And if I can request Jim, who's the co-chair, to take this forward. We meet each other, yes, but if maybe those interested only could come a day earlier, only those who are interested, and we arrange visits to one of the best schools in the city where the IC3 is being hosted. We could visit schools to learn, to see the way they function, to interact with their leaders there, and we take a tour of the school, not just one school, a bus tour of maybe 2 or 3 schools within, So it helps us to grow a little more and to learn a little more, because it's so true that the IC3 has been all about meeting people, about learning, and about growing. And as I said earlier in a few sessions that I attended, that it's time for us to come back year after year and share. Mrs. Uppal was there yesterday when I mentioned, to share, to keep a 1 hour session or a half an hour session for leaders in each to share what they took back to the institution and how the institution was impacted because of them having come to the IC3. And we already seeing huge impacts of the IC3. But I think it's wonderful to hear it from the leaders themselves as to how they've seen this fruitful change within the walls of their school, with all that we've taken back from these IC3 conferences that we've had.
Thank you, Mr. De Cruz. I think what you said just now, and of course there are pre-conference workshops. This week we had a level 1 pre-conference workshop for counselors specifically at Sun City School, and on Tuesday at Boston Valley School, and then of course the Presidential Forum, which is an invite-only event for senior leaders at Shiv Nagar School, Gurgaon. But I think what you're suggesting, I think that's a phenomenal concept, and where it's almost a learning laboratory where school leaders and university leaders, representatives can actually learn what's happening at the most innovative schools in a particular area. I think that's a phenomenal idea. This year there were some hurdles in terms of physical presence, of course, and even at the pre-conference workshops there was a pretty strict limit to the number of people that could be there. But I think barring those kinds of things, now with the hybrid, all of this we can make happen. And actually what I'm thinking is, we did pre-conference events, right, Garima? I mean, we did these amazing pre-conference kind of networking events. Maybe we need a post-conference, at the platform or, wherever in another 2 weeks or something, where, people who, once we've really digested what we've experienced, perhaps to come back and share that.
Exactly.
I think that's a phenomenal suggestion. Phenomenal suggestion. I'm looking at Gerardo. What time is it, my friend?
It's 2:30 in the morning.
Oh my gosh. Can we give Gerardo a round of applause, please? Gerardo is in Costa Rica, and I would say, just on a personal note, I think in the last 6 months, Gerardo is someone that's given a lot, and I've learned a lot from Gerardo, who's actually serving as an IC3 leader on the Sustainable Development Committee, but also graciously serving as a liaison to the new Latin America and Caribbean Committee as well. So Gerardo, I know it's 2:30 in the morning, you're here, and I saw you there yesterday burning the midnight oil. I think we'd love to hear from you and just what your experience is, how things have been going, and any reflections you have as an IC3 leader, one of the the newest IC3 leaders who's making a big impact in my estimation.
Well, thanks a lot. It's been great. I've loved all the sessions. I've loved interacting with people. It's been quite a ride. I was present in the SDG booth, and we had 50 plus people attending there and asking questions, and trying to see how to blend in SDGs, the 17 SDGs into counseling. So I mean, all I can say, and this is for everyone, in SDGs we work with being a change maker, and I invite all of you to be change makers. Leave a mark, transcend, not only walk through life and be able to contribute and to give back to society, to the community, and and in any way that you guys can, be as a leader, as an advocate, but be proactive, and as I usually tell my students, be positive disruptors. That's what we need, And, you know, that's what we are looking for, and that's how we can fix what's going on. I was talking to Otillo, who's one of the, who's also in the SDG group, and to Lucian, and they're asking, well, how's Costa Rica right now? And I was telling them that more or less 35 to 40% of the territory is flooded right now due to huge rainstorms. And there's a huge problem because we cannot forecast weather right now. It's really hectic, chaotic how, you know, rainstorms are hitting the Central American region. And, you know, this is due to climate impact and climate change. So, you know, that's not the only thing that we have to worry about in the SDG group, but, you know, it's a start, you know, and being a change maker and, you know, making sure that as counselors, we can, you know, guide our students, help them, and be able to lead them to, you know, change-making professions that will allow them to not only be successful professionals, but to also be contributors to society and be part of the active change-making movement will, you know, allow for a better society, you know. And resonating what, you know, Ganesh was saying, you know, local actions with a global impact. Jim, it's great seeing you again and seeing everyone. Abrazos.
Yes, big hugs. Big hugs to you, Gerardo. I can't wait to see you in person. And yeah, I'll share on and I know we're coming to the end of our time. Just a note about the Sustainable Development Committee and just the power of what can happen when we come together and collaborate. I remember 2 years ago, at the end of the annual IC3 conference, we were sitting and we were just thinking about, you know, and I'm looking at, you know, thinking of all of the kind of single-use items that we had throughout the conference week, and, you know, all of these plastic bottles that we were using, and that actually was a pretty, you know, naive, I think, perspective, but an innocent, a genuine one, to say, how can we just as IC3, as we start to have more events and, you know, all of this, to think about our impact on the climate. That's how the conversation begun. And then once we, you know, we got a few really key, passionate people together, and Lucien Giordano is based in China at Dulwich International, is the chair of the Sustainable Development Committee. You know, we said, why are we stopping with just climate action? You know, we have 17 Sustainable Development Goals that the UN has set out. So the charge of the committee initially was, how can we integrate the 17 UN SDGs and broaden it from climate action? Now that's a huge ask, Gerardo knows that, you know, and I think you know, the committee is just learning, you know, about how we can actually take this to counseling. But, you know, that did not exist in, you know, the last 2 years ago. So, you know, this, and who knows, maybe, you know, one of you is the originator of the next, you know, and I think what we didn't have there, which was also a new committee. Did we have the Indian Higher Education Committee there? I think we did not. There is a new committee in that area as well. So bring those ideas, you know, bring those passions and figure out what the need is. And if this connects to counseling in every school and this mission that we have, by all means, we want to hear those ideas and make that happen. And as we, Prabha, oh, this is perfect. If Prabha, you can you hear us, Prabha? Prabha, we're not hearing you. I think you just, if you can unmute, Prabha, can we hear you? Can you hear us?
Can you hear me, Jim?
Oh, Prabha, I'm so happy to see you. Prabha is the chair of the IC3 Africa Committee, I think, and, you know, someone who's made such a huge impact on schools across that region. I know it's our screen is pretty dark, Prabha. We can't really see your face, but I know you're there. And why don't we have a closing sentiment from you as this session, you know, is here. We'd love to just get that, and then we'll close this session.
First of all, a very good afternoon to everyone, and I'm sorry I just barged into this session. It was my intention, in fact. So I'm so happy to be seeing all of you. Unfortunately, I couldn't make it in person. And Jim, thank you for your very kind words as usual. So I'm just very happy to be here.
Short and simple, Prabha. Prabha's based in Mauritius for those that haven't had a chance to meet. And I'm remembering 2 years back at the 4th Annual IC3 Conference, our conversations there, Prabha, and just like the Sustainable Development Committee, the IC3 Africa Committee was born, and Prabha's led that amazingly and has taken it to amazing heights. So I just want to say thank you. I hope all of you get involved at whatever level, whatever really resonates with you. And I think what I love about IC3 is that it just, it's very heart-led. We use the head, of course, but I think the heart. Oh, hi, Shil. Hi, yeah, and we, this is really where. And Shil, would you like to share a sentiment? We would invite that, and if you could just, for those that don't know you, introduce yourself and with someone who's, and there's a mic there if you want to take that one, Shil, and there's a camera there fixed as well.
Okay, fine. So thank you, Jim, for bringing me in. Actually, last 2 years it was like every day thinking about how kids are going to go into the future with an education system, and this is a wonderful analogy to tell our students, parents, and everyone, and because this is so important and critical to our work, and without this, schools cannot exist anymore. Taking them to the future. So that's how we've been doing it. I've been slightly away from the content committee for a while because schools under pandemic was difficult. So, but then you cannot imagine the kind of intensity that exists in every conversation that one has around what we want to do in the future. Thank you, Jim. I'll be back in the content committee.
Thank you so much, Shil. I think we, in whatever capacity, we serve, I think that's really important. So I think in closing, firstly, thank you for coming. Mission, impact, action. I hope as many of you, I hope all of you will stay with us. There's another session that's coming up, and then the closing, and of course the awards. This is going to be a really powerful closing, and to the, what's turning out to be a pretty memorable 5th Annual IC3 Conference. Thank you, everyone from around the world. We'll see you, I hope, in person sometime soon, and signing off from Delhi for now. We'll see you in the next sessions.